Hello, BookTube. There's a massive nor'easter headed for Boston this week. The latest forecasts are looking rather dire. It's looking like it could last anywhere from 18 to 22 minutes and drop as much as 1/100th of 1 inch of rain. Needless to say, we haven't seen weather like this since '02. And whenever weather like that is coming, I always feel the urge to stock up on books, just in case. And it had been a long time since I went to the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston, which is my home away from home, in the sense that I was hated at my original home, and I'm hated at my home away from home. It's a used bookstore in downtown Boston. Wonderful place. All the selection in the world that you would want inside the shop, and also a sale lot outside the shop. Thousands more books for $1 or $3 or $5, so that if you shop in the outside sale lot, you're going to hit your carrying limit before you hit your wallet's limit, which is always a nice feeling. At a bookstore, you can indulge yourself. It's a nice feeling because you can indulge yourself, in addition to everything else, you can indulge yourself in things you don't know anything about. You can take a flyer on stuff out in the sale lot. That doesn't often happen to me because I go way back with a lot of books. I go way back with them. So the number of books that I see in the Brattle sale lot that I have no idea about at all, that are just a total shot in the dark, that's never going to be a very large amount, but it's always fun when that happens. So I went today. I had errands to do in the area anyway, so I went to the Brattle and I shopped to my heart's content. I got a gigantic pile of books to tide me over in the event that we get a monster storm and 1/100th of 1 inch of warm rain. Although I couldn't help but notice at the Brattle that I am approaching the end of my store credit. So I don't know what rationale, I don't know what process you people take to make sure that I am always in credit at the Brattle, but you had better draw straws or whatever it is you do and phone in some more credit at the shop. Otherwise, in a few visits, I may be reduced to spending money on books, which is not something sexy influencers like to do. But actually, sexy influencers don't spend money on books at all. They don't get comp books either. They don't have any idea what books are. But I found a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about. A lot of it was done with BookTube looking over my shoulder, which sounds awful, but is a wonderful addition to my Brattle experience forever and ever and ever. For 50 years. My Brattle shopping experience out in the sale lot did not involve BookTube. I did not know that BookTube existed. BookTube did not exist. YouTube did not exist. The internet did not exist. So the people that I had with me, so to speak, when I was out in the sale lot, if they weren't actual in the flesh friends, were the occasional person here and there who I know their interests, so I maybe know to look for something, or if some odd random thing crops up in the sale lot, I know to think about it. Maybe get it if it's $1 on the chance that they don't have it and might want it. That became much easier once we all carried phones with us. That way I could identify exactly what I was talking about and maybe even connect with the person in real time to find out if they wanted it. And then BookTube came along, and suddenly I have daily or weekly contact with dozens and dozens, hundreds of genuine readers who are also every bit as idiosyncratic as you could ask for. People like this or like that, people who don't have any tolerance for X, Y, or Z, people who love one particular niche subject, people who talk about things, not necessarily even just vicarious shopping for other people, but people who talk about things on the channel. That brings it to my mind. So I did a lot of that today. BookTube is always with me at the Brattle now. It feels wonderful. And I would ordinarily start off this book haul with mass market paperbacks. I got a lot of mass market paperbacks, but in this case, I have to start off with something even less than mass market paperbacks. I have to start off with ephemera. And I am absolutely not going to have ephemera in every Brattle haul from here on out. I am absolutely not going to do that. I do not want to accumulate ephemera. I don't want to accumulate books either, although I have a funny way of showing it. But I do have two pieces of ephemera to show. Both oversized comic books. Forever and ever, for a decade, Marvel Comics put out Conan the Barbarian in ages past. And they also put out a black and white companion magazine called The Savage Sword of Conan. and I loved it. Almost from the very beginning, I was on board with Savage Sword of Conan. I loved the fact that Conan was appearing in comic books anyway, so I was buying Conan the Barbarian, even though at the beginning I wasn't all that fond of the artwork. And I was the same thing with Savage Sword of Conan. I was a fan of it before I was a fan of it, so to speak. And one particular issue of Savage Sword of Conan changed that and made me a super fan. Made me so that I stuck with Savage Sword of Conan for probably 8 years after that one issue. And I was often rewarded for it. And rewarded all over again last year with Cimmerian September, an event that Michael K. Vaughan, of course, it was Michael K. Vaughan, thought up, an event dedicated to Conan the Barbarian. And the event last year, Cimmerian September's inaugural iteration, was to read the canonical works of Conan by Robert E. Howard, which are behind me on a shelf up there somewhere, right up there. And I didn't do that. I was a rebel right from the beginning. So instead, I read my way through Savage Sword of Conan, concentrating on the issues late in the run that I had not read. And I was very pleasantly surprised for a lot of those issues, including some vintage John Buscema artwork. John Buscema was the artist that eventually drew me into a lock-solid orbit with both Conan the Barbarian and Savage Sword of Conan. And the book went on, and when you've got a book that's that old, years and years and years old, dozens of issues, a dozen issues a year, you start to have a back catalog that you can repackage. You can repackage that back catalog and resell it for people who didn't catch it the first time. It's not necessarily just soulless capitalism. And Marvel did that. They created another black and white comic called the Conan Saga that reprinted the Savage Sword of Conan. Maybe little bits and pieces thrown in here and there. And there is a vast pile of the Conan Saga at the Brattle right now. And I have all of Savage Sword of Conan, on my tablet, and I have one omnibus edition. I don't have all the others, but I have one. So originally I didn't think anything of it, and then I made the mistake of looking at them today, and I found the Conan Saga reprint of the Savage Sword of Conan issue that did it for me, that won me over, which is this one. My original copy of this, Savage Sword of Conan number, I think 8 or 4 or something like that. Actually, this will tell me, won't it? Well, no, it isn't telling me immediately, but that's all right. My original copy of this thing is falling apart. I have the e-copy, but I love this issue. I just love it. The Boris Vallejo cover there, and this is a classic Conan story with John Buscema artwork, Roy Thomas, of course, doing the writing, and Alfredo Alcala, who I gather Buscema didn't like what he did to Buscema's pencils, but that's a shame because he did marvelous things to Buscema's pencils. He made them utterly incredible. And this is just a wonderful, wonderful story about a wizard who has built an entire palace around an oddity that he has either found or maybe somehow managed to take advantage of, which when he dips a giant bucket into this well, it goes through time, and he can pull up weird things from the mists of time, as you can see. When he shows it to Conan, there's a Tyrannosaurus Rex at the bottom of this pit here, which of course would not work, but that's all right. You don't expect it to work. Briefly, Conan and this wizard are allies. Very briefly, they find themselves fighting against marauding forces that break into the wizard's palace, but otherwise they are enemies, and it's wonderful. I love this story so much. When I read it, I reread it, I read it over and over again. I even went back to Tro's Grider's store, and I knew the guy who was doing, he was doing everything. He did the whole shop, but he and I were in cahoots when it came to magazines. And I actually asked him, do you think there's any chance at all, that you could get another copy of this? Because my issue is, I'm reading a lot of it, I'm rereading a lot of it, and he must have thought I was insane. Not only to propose getting a second issue of a magazine, which he thought of as nothing, he thought of as Little Lulu, but also that I would read a thing like that over and over again. He must have thought that was crazy, and of course he couldn't do it. So I like having the black and white pages here. That's all. It was $1. So, and also for $1, I found something that I just mentioned relatively recently on this channel, about 1,000 videos ago. So yesterday, Michael K. Vaughan and I we did videos about Marvel epic collections that don't exist but should. Marvel reprints that have never happened yet. And one of the things that I suggested was this thing itself, Epic Illustrated. This is the first issue with a Frank Frazetta cover. It was an omnibus magazine. This has an opening story starring Galactus and the Silver Surfer, written by Stan Lee and drawn by John Buscema. So that was meant to draw in the crowds. But this also has a lot of original black and white stuff from Jim Starlin. And these stories lay the groundwork for his comic Dreadstar, which I kind of liked until it went off the rails, as all the things that Starlin did do. This is the first issue of Epic Illustrated. Never thought I would see it again. And it counts as ephemera, but that's it for ephemera. I am not going to be getting ephemera every time I go to the Brattle. But then, let's look at the books now. We'll start with the mass market paperbacks. The first mass market paperback that I found, I want more. I want more of this. I found Echoes of Valor, edited by Carl Edward Wagner. But I want other books in this series. The ones that didn't have this cover artist. I don't even know who this cover artist is, but this was not the only book in this series, and I want the others. I'm hoping that if this showed up at the shop, the others will too. These were anthology fantasy stories. And there's one story in here by Robert E. Howard, The Black Strangers in here. And then you have Fritz Leiber. And does Carl Edward Wagner do something himself in here? No, Henry Kuttner does Wet Magic in here. I loved these things. I have no idea what my original mass markets were. I forget how many of them there were, too. Probably one of you could tell me. Probably Mike could tell me. I think there were 5 of these. I only found one today. But I love these anthology volumes, so I grabbed it. And it starts a Conan theme. For a lot of these mass market paperbacks. That, again, was BookTube looking over my shoulder. Because just recently, Michael K. Vaughan announced the parameters for Sumerian September 2024. So you've got a row of great BookTube events. There are plenty more. But you've got a row of great BookTube events just leading you straight through the summer. Which is terrific. Absolutely terrific. Of course, for April, you have People in April. You have People, a great event put on by Roz at Scally Dandling About the Books and Elizabeth at Book Kinds and Books about biography, autobiography, memoir, life writing, which is my favorite kind of thing. So, wonderful. You've got April. Then May, I don't know if there's a gap from May. I'm not sure if maybe Midrash is up and running for this May. But then you've got June, and then the summer starts. So you have June on the Range in June, and also I would imagine that in or around June, Book Trek will start again for reading all things Star Trek. And then July, you have Michael K. Vaughan again, striking with a new event. This is Rocket Summer, vintage science fiction. Then August, of course, we have Garb August, where we read garbage, and then September, Sumerian September. And Michael K. Vaughan announced just recently that the parameter for Sumerian September is pastiches. Conan pastiches. Now, I did that last time. Roy Thomas is a fantastic Conan writer, but he's not the guy who made up Conan the Barbarian. So I spent the whole of Sumerian September last year reading and really enjoying Savage Sword of Conan, which is technically pastiche. But here we're going to concentrate on the novels. And I found a few. Now, I have a lot of Conan novels as ebooks, a lot of them. But I still think that maybe I don't have them all. Because this one is not ringing a bell. This is by Roland Green, who will be known to me, and I will be reading extensively in Garb August under a different name. But this is Conan and the Gods of the Mountain. I honestly don't think I have an ebook of this. I have dozens of them, but I don't think I have this one. So I grabbed it because I am all on board with Sumerian September. Then Conan the Hero by Leonard Carpenter. Again, I don't think I have this. Look at that cover, huh? Isn't that just classic Conan? Then I found Conan the Formidable by Steve Perry, who's an author I don't particularly like him. I tend to like him more when he's writing Conan, when he's writing anything else, but I found Conan the Formidable. I have this as an ebook, but there's something about having a cheesy mass market paperback with the pages going yellow and whatnot. There's something about that I like. And then more Conan pastiche fiction, but this Conan pastiche fiction was not considered pastiche fiction for the longest time. it only now it is firmly in that camp, and there's no dishonor there. But this is L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter and Bjorn Nyborg. These are later books in the Conan series that Once Upon a Time was the only way you could get Conan in the United States. I found a bunch of them in relatively perfect condition. I knew that they were duplicates. They were $1 a piece, but I knew that some of these are probably duplicates, but I remember that the batch of these that I got at the Book Barn with David Murphy last year weren't in the best of shape. Some of them were really, really warped and old and musty. So I figure once I've cataloged these and inventoried them and whatnot, I will then swap out the old ones. I found Conan the Warrior with this great lack of fuss on the back cover. You just get the illustration on the back cover. I found Conan of the Isles, which doesn't even make any pretense of Robert E. Howard's involvement. This is just L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter. I found Conan the Buccaneer, again with the no fuss on the back, which I really like to really highlight these Frazetta covers. And this is in really, really good shape, I think, compared especially to the one that I already have. Although I have ebooks of all of these as well. None of this is really excusable, although there's quite a bit here that I don't have ebooks of. So, and then finally, Conan of Aquilonia, which someone decided to really gussy up. Someone put an actual plastic covering on this thing for our mass market paperback, and there you have an older Conan and young Prince Khan. So I found a ton of Conan. I am ready for Sumerian September in 2024. Then science fiction. This is illustrated science fiction. This is Black Mark by the great comic book artist Gil Kane. It was also not that bad as a Ron Goulart style pulp science fiction and fantasy writer. This is a combination of both. This is science fiction that takes place far enough in the future so that it has a fantasy setting. And this is an illustrated novel. This is all Gil Kane artwork all throughout here. He doesn't just do the illustrations. That's what this is. It's just a graphic novel before its time, before there were any graphic novels. I used to have a big collection of Black Mark, much bigger than this. I think there were 2 other mass market paperbacks for this. I don't have that collection anymore. No idea what happened to it. So I grabbed this for $1. Then A.E. Van Vogt. I'm always up for a little of this author. He's not always my cup of tea, but I found a Daw Yellow Spine mass market paperback of The Winged Man. You see there with E. Murphy Hull E. Main Hull because Hull wrote this originally and serialized it for, I forget the name of the periodical, something like that. Michael K. Vaughan would probably know, but then Van Vogt swooped in and substantially rewrote it. So that's why his name is in big letters on the cover there. Also, he would sell it, and Hull's name would not. I found Richard Cowper, who's an author that I love. I had old pocket mass market paperbacks of him once upon a time. I don't have any. This is the first one I've had in forever. I think he's fantastic. I don't know why he's not remembered. I don't know why anyone never talks about him or reprints him at all. Out there where the big ships go is terrific. And this book is terrific too, Time Out of Mind. Very similar to the Van Vogt in that it's if I remember correctly, it's far future fantasy. And, you know, I'm going to grab this for $1 if I see it. Of course I am. Then also for $1, I found an old penguin of a comic novel of Kingsley Amis that is not Lucky Jim. Kingsley Amis, of course, wrote many, many books that weren't Lucky Jim. And I always mean to go back to them. I am aware in the back of my mind that it's unfair to reduce Kingsley Amis to a one-book author. He had nothing but contempt for such authors and nothing but terror in his weaker moments that he would be that type of thing. He had nothing but terror for that. It horrified his whole generation of British writers. They all worried that, you know, I am more than just one book. I didn't just write A Clockwork Orange. I wrote a lot of things, etc., etc. And I found Take a Girl Like You. My impression of most of Amis's fiction is that it's scraps of good things wrapped around a whole bunch of bloviating, of just this sodden tale telling, and that is far more controlled in Lucky Jim than it is in anything else that he wrote. But I could be wrong about that. I think the shade of Kingsley Amis probably wants me to be wrong about that. So, and I spent last month, I think, or a little bit earlier than that, I spent a lot of time reading around in that gigantic letter collection of Kingsley Amis, which can't help but predispose me towards his book. So when I saw this for $1, I grabbed it. I don't know. These old orange-spined penguins tend not to last more than one read. So, I mean, they were cheap, but they were also cheaply made, which wasn't always true of penguins. So I don't know how much life it will have in it, but I don't have any Kingsley Amis in ebook. So then I made a couple of stabs at romance this time around at the Brattle. And again, this was a case of a booktuber looking over my shoulder. Sarah at the Bookish Knitter is, in addition to everything else, she is our queen of category romance. She is, I just got a notice here that the battery on this thing is giving out, but I am prepared. Let's get the power cord up here. Plug this in. There we go. Because we have a long way to go. Okay, I'm going to outlast the battery on this thing. Sarah, the Bookish Knitter, is our queen of category. Categories being Harlequin or Mills and Boon. And she's not only the queen of category in terms of what Harlequin is doing now, she goes way back with categories, knows their histories, has followed authors from one imprint to another. And I found an older book. I found an older category romance, which I never find at the Brattle. I never do. This is from 1996. It's by Alice Orr, and it's called Manhattan Heat, part of the Dangerous Men series in Harlequin Intrigue. No idea what to make of this. The Harlequin Intrigue line is still going on. But I don't remember this from the 1990s. I must have sold this. I was selling books in retail in 1996. So I must have sold this. I must have seen it in my shop. Maybe I had not yet come over to romance, or maybe I had not yet come over. Certainly I wouldn't have come over to contemporary romance yet, because I eased my way in to romance as a genre with historical romances of Joanna Lindsay and Beatrice Small. I eased my way in with them. Beatrice Small, Joanna Lindsay, and Victoria Holt. And then I gradually got accustomed to the genre from there. But I don't think I've ever read this. I'm pretty sure that I haven't. So I grabbed it. And that is it for the mass market paperbacks. Then we can do a couple of trade paperbacks. I found a book by William C. Davis, the great William C. Davis, the great American Civil War historian. He wrote a lot of books on the subject, and I can honestly say every one of them is worth your time. And I found his classic study of the First Battle of Bull Run, which is not to be missed. This was the thing that changed the psychology of the whole war. This was the moment that showed everybody that this was not a lark. That this was the prevailing idea in Washington and Richmond was that maybe our boys will bloody each other's noses over some misbegotten creek somewhere, but that will be the wake-up call that we need to come to terms. We'll come to terms. Of course, we're not going to fight a war. Maybe that will happen, some sort of glorified fist fight, but other than that, no. And this proved that was not true. This proved what one prognosticator in Boston had said all along, which is, no, this is going to be an enormously long and bloody war. So what have we got here? From the first passage in William C. Davis's book about the twilight of America's innocence to the last, the reader is carried through what many in the 1860s believed would be the only major conflict between the North and South. So optimistic were the people in Washington that a crowd of civilians came from the city with picnic hampers to witness the crushing defeat of the upstart rebels. The following day, however, the mood would shatter in a battle that confounded the expectations of both sides, the First Battle of Bull Run. The clarification there being because another major battle was fought in the same period, in the same space. It was a training ground for some of America's most colorful military figures. P.G.T. Beauregard, Joe Johnson, Micah Cummins, Irvin McDowell, and Stonewall Jackson. And it also marked the first strategic use of railroads and was perhaps the first time the horrors of battle were photographed for the people back home. I've read a few books on the first Battle of Bull Run, but I haven't read Davis's book in forever. When did this come out? I may never have read this. 1977. I bet I didn't. I bet I've never read this. He's a treat to read, so I was happy to find it. Then I found another trade paperback. I found a Dover trade paperback, which those of you who are youthful, if you know Dover at all, you know them as making cheap, boring-looking trade paperback reprints of canonical classics, Huck Finn and that sort of thing. Before Barnes & Noble entered the arena with very low-priced, very cheaply made paperbacks of classics that you have to read in school, you would probably have gone to Dover for that. Your teacher would have said, well, we're going to study The Scarlet Letter in this class, and your class is already costing you $400 a year, so you want to get the cheapest book you can. So you go to the bookstore and you look at The Scarlet Letter, and there are 5 editions on the shelf. You pick the Dover one because it's $1. But before Dover descended to that, they were a very vigorous publishing arm. They did all kinds of interesting things, including lots and lots of really interesting, never see it reprint volumes of off the beaten path stuff. Really good productions. Now, there are quite a few Dover productions at the shop today. I have a feeling that a recent buy that the shop went on, a huge number of books, huge. I have a feeling that included a lot of Dovers, a lot of them. And I'm going to try to be picky with them because I don't need a whole bunch of Dovers. But I found something today that I couldn't pass up. Not only because it's the original typeface, the original plates for it, which has that old-fashioned type font that you never see, but also because it has all the original illustrations. It's a novel by William Dean Howells, but it's not The Rise of Silas Lapham, which forever and ever, for the last 50 years, has been the only novel that's remembered by him. It's The Landlord at Lion's Head, which is a really good story. It's a really moving story about... mainly about the owner of a Crossroads facility that he wants to make it into something. He works to make it first a hostelry stop and then a bigger stop, an inn, and he wants to go even bigger than that. It's a portrait of his ambition. But all the side characters are really well done too. There are all sorts of digressions. The picture that's painted in these pages of, for instance, Harvard University of the time, the 19th century, is wonderful. The pictures, the glimpses that we get of the Boston of the time are wonderful. This has, let me see, it's full of the original illustrations, just full of them. And the only other version of this book that I have ever had, I don't think I ever got the Library of America volume. Look at those great old things. I don't think I ever got the Library of America volume that has this. So the only other version that I've had of the Landlord of Lion's Head was a mass market paperback that was done, I think, by Signet 50 years ago, 60 years ago, something like that. And it didn't include the illustrations, and it was reset. So this is lovely. This is absolutely lovely, although my heart broke when I read the back here. On the occasion of his 75th birthday in 1912, William Dean Howells was formally lauded by America's literati at a large commemorative dinner. Howells was an eminent poet, novelist, and essayist, editor of the Atlantic Monthly, Harper's Monthly, and Cosmopolitan, and the first and lifetime president of the American Academy of Arts and Letters. To call Howells a major force in American literature is sheer understatement. His place alongside Henry James and Edith Wharton is secure. Sic transit gloria mundi. That position is no longer secure. For just about 10, 15 years ago, the Norton Anthology of American Literature, which is the primary anthology of books taught in American schools, dropped The Rise of Silas Lapham. The Rise of Silas Lapham, I believe, is still in print, probably a cheap Barnes & Noble paperback, but nothing else. A Modern Instance, Hazard of New Fortunes, other great books of his, they're not in print anymore. I don't think they are. Certainly they're not widely available anymore. And this thing and other, second shelf efforts like it, no chance. So Dover did the whole run. of William Dean Howells, and they included all of the original illustrations, I believe. You can't always guarantee that. They did a huge run of Trollope, for instance, but not all of those have the original illustrations. Some of them do, some of them don't. I will be on the lookout for gems like this. I am not going to stock my shelf with all the other Dover stuff that comes out. Not at all. I'd like their William Bartram. If I could find it, I would like it. But I have a feeling that some of the really good, out-of-the-way Dovers, the ones with the elaborate fold-out included maps and everything, some of those are probably collectible. And no matter where you go for used books, you're going to deal with those horrible insectile collectors. There's one that has made a habit of going to the Brattle lately. I'm really hoping that his cancer metastasizes and he just can't make it anymore. I'm really hoping for a long, slow, and painful death for him. I don't want to say anything to him. I'm not part of the Brattle staff. I don't want to speak out of turn to other customers, but I hate the very sight of him. And I've seen him twice now. We will see. We will see. But some of those, the point I was trying to make is that some of those older Dovers, from when Dover was a real thing, when they weren't just cheap mass market paper or cheap classics, some of those older ones are collectible, but a lot of them, they don't. Those horrible insectile collectors don't know anything about books. They don't care about books at all. It's a slave auction. The one emotion that you will see coming off them in waves is disdain, not for books, but for you, because you're here shopping for things that you're going to read. Do you have any idea the time you're wasting? You could be making 5 cents profit on these things if you sold them, if you flipped them on eBay and you want to read them instead. They don't know these things at all. They don't know books at all. So they scan the ISBNs on the back, which means that this thing is of no interest to them because they don't have even the energy to type in the ISBN. They've got to scan it. So they just ignore some of these older Dovers, which means I'll get a shot at them, which is great. Then this next one is we're in the hardcovers now. And the first hardcover that I have, I've seen this in a mass market paperback. Of course, I've had it in a mass market paperback. I've seen it in a trade paperback. But I saw it in a hardcover for $1. I had to grab it because it is the aforementioned Bertrie Small, who I met only once. She came into my shop, and she was utterly delightful. Just as almost all romance ladies that I've ever met have been. Utterly delightful. No airs, no pretension, and the kind of understated swagger that comes from knowing that you are handily outselling John Updike. Handily. You are easily you're lapping him 10 times. Granted, people condescend to you and you don't get written up in, extremely fluffy pieces in the New York Review of Books, but your grandchildren are going to be able to afford any college they want. So, and then there's a kind of swagger that comes with that. None of these ladies, if you would never be able to accuse any of them of swaggering, but they knew not only the money, but that we have the readers as well. No one's putting our book out on their coffee table in order to brag about it. They're buying it eagerly in order to read it and love it and let me know all about it. They're lining up for it at the library because they love it, not because they think they should. But anyway, I found a Bertrie Small, and if it had been more than one, I would have gotten more than one. I found a hardcover of This Heart of Mine, which is a Skye O'Malley book, with this great artwork there. No, they don't mess up the artwork at all. This takes place in Elizabethan times. Queen Elizabeth sends Skye O'Malley out on another mission. I wish that I could read you the opening. The opening's terrific, but it's a little bit energetic, let's just say. I wonder if I can fudge it just a little. Well, let's read just a little. There's only one word that I want to omit. Christ bloody bones. The oath exploded like a thunderclap from Elizabeth Tudor's mouth. She stopped in mid-stride and, whirling about, fixed an angry stare upon the only other woman in the room. "You dare to say no to me, madam? I am your queen." "I have no queen," came the calm reply. "In fact, thanks to you, I have no country." Then the queen hisses an imprecation. We'll skip over that. "You have ever been a thorn in my side. Did I not give you and your husband a home? Are your children not welcome at my court? Is this the gratitude you show me for all my many kindnesses?" She glowered at the men who attended her as if enlisting their support. "Kindnesses? The other woman emitted a sharp bark of laughter. "Let me think back, Majesty, over our long association. There was a time when you condoned Lord Dudley's rape of my person because you weren't woman enough to love him totally. Then there was a time you forced me into a foreign marriage, promising to protect my infant son's lands, which you then quickly gave away. And I seem to remember another time when, needing my help, you kidnapped my daughter to ensure my cooperation." And it goes on from there. Of course, Skye O'Malley is going to take the mission. But I haven't read this in forever. When did this come out? God help us, I don't even want to know. When did this come out? 1985. It's probably been since then that I read a Skye O'Malley book. So I couldn't pass it up. All right. Then this next one, probably the find of the day. If you don't count Epic Illustrated #1. Probably this was the find of the day. This was certainly something that had been bothering me for a while. March Mystery Madness, of course, just ended, and I read 2 Agatha Christie's. I read the 9th Jane Marple appearance and the 9th Hercule Poirot appearance. And that got me thinking about Agatha Christie, of course. A lot of you have been really good about, disagreeing with me or agreeing with me or teaching me or giving me your thoughts on the subjects of what I talked about the last time with Lord Edgware Dies. Oh my God, the emails, the comments on the video have been great too, but the emails I've been getting also great, and unbeknownst to all the email senders, also hitting exactly the right spot, because a lot of you have been disagreeing with me. Most of you know how to do it. Most of you know how to disagree with someone without being condescending, without being a raging a-hole, without being anything like that. I know this already. I know this is true. I have ongoing disagreements with people all the time who get how to disagree. And it doesn't have to be people that I know. Mark Richardson and I disagree on aspects of New England history a lot. For all I know, I made a comment the other day about Harry Truman mentioned that a demonstration of the power of the atom bomb would certainly have made the pro-negotiated truce faction in the Emperor's cabinet stronger. That would probably have led to them pushing him to surrender. There are ways to disagree with me about that, and there are ways not to. Sweepingly saying that I'm an ignoramus and don't know what I'm talking about is not the right way to do it. But for all I know, David Murphy, he knows World War II really well. For all I know, he does disagree with that. He would not disagree with me in a disagreeable way. Mark does not disagree with me in a disagreeable way. Mark's disagreeable in a whole bunch of other ways, but not that. And I was extremely irritated by another example of an obnoxiously condescending comment. And all of you were sending emails talking about Lord Edgware Dies, talking about Agatha Christie and her racism and her sexism and her bigotry, and whether or not it was real, and whether or not she was sending up the people who thought that way but wasn't really that way herself. So many of you have been emailing me about that, because Christie is an author we all know. She's an author we all grapple with. And so many of you have been disagreeing with me on that in wonderful ways, absolutely wonderful ways. I don't know why it's such a mystery for some people how to do that. Anyway, Agatha Christie's been on my mind, and that drew my attention to something that has been bothering me for some time, which is a great book of hers. Her autobiography, I think, is great. I love it. And I have a UK trade paperback of her autobiography that I reinforced with clear plastic packing tape because I love it. I go back to chunks of it, or big chunks of it, all the time. I've stuffed things in it, clippings and whatnot, but a trade paperback isn't meant for this, and this thing does not have long left. So every time I see it on the shelf, and David and I just rearranged my biography shelf, so I have seen it recently. Every time I see it, I think, I wish there were a hardcover that I could get. But the hardcover of Christie's autobiography in the American version is incredibly ugly. It's just so bland. And today I found this. I did not know that this existed. I found the autobiography with this terrific cover. Just fantastic. It's this. I don't know. This is it says Harper, but I want to say that this is the UK. Oh no, it has the price in dollars on the cover. Well, I don't know what this is, but I don't think this is the American version. at all. But now I finally have this, and of course I'm going to reread it. I'm going to reread a chunk of it. And I will conduct a solemn ceremony, and I will convey all of the stuff that I have stuffed into the trade paperback into this, and then I will get rid of the trade paperback. So I was very, very happy to find this. Also happy because of People in April. People! of a booktube event celebrating biographies. I had people on the mind when I was first arriving at the sale lot this morning. I thought, what if I were to concentrate on biographies out here in the sale lot? The sale lot is not organized in any way except by price. And you can't go to the sale lot with an agenda. That's a very bad idea. If you do that, you won't find anything. The Brattle gods will be watching. That's why I hope the dealers are dissatisfied enough out there, because they do go with agendas, that they never come back. I'm hoping that the one guy I've seen twice now doesn't come back. I would be okay if he had a protracted incapacitating cancer. I'd be okay if he walked into an open manhole or was struck by a crosstown bus. I'd be okay pretty much anyway. Any way that he dies painfully would be fine by me, as long as he doesn't come back. As an idle thought, not a plan, just an idle thought, I thought, what if I bought every biography that was in the sale lot? That's not possible. That's not possible at all. And I wouldn't have wanted to either. But I did find a lot of biographies that I want to show you. So should we concentrate on those? Yeah, let's concentrate on those. So let's skip ahead to the one that was not. I found Al Silverman's collected book of the Book of the Month. This is about the Book of the Month Club. In its heyday, all through its founding, from its founding decades all the way on. For all of those decades, there's a great book on the history of the Book of the Month Club, but this isn't that. This is something else. For all of those decades, the Book of the Month Club had its own bulletin, where its readers and its assessors would write out their thoughts, write out their evaluations of all the candidates to be Book of the Month Club. Back when it was a serious thing. Now it's less of a serious thing now. It's mainly just a publicity adjunct now. But once upon a time, a lot of care went into the Book of the Month Club. I don't know what it's like now, behind the scenes. But this is a collection of that. This book is a collection of those reports on every kind of book in the world, which is just fantastic. I'd never seen this book before. We have a painting on the back of the founding members of the Book of the Month Club. And there, all the way at the end, doesn't he look studious? It's Henry Seidel Canby. This is a delight. I'm gonna just consume my way through this. But then all the rest of what I found works for People in April, I think, with perhaps one exception. Let's do the exception first. I don't actually know when we're talking about People in April. So nonfiction, that is life writing. So biographies, of course, but also memoirs. But what about letter collections? Do they count? Are they on the outer fringes of the penumbra of People in April? I wasn't sure. I wasn't really sure. But I want this volume anyway. And it was, I think, $3. I found Mary Jarrell's collection of Randall Jarrell's letters, spanning his whole life. So you get to see him change over time. Randall Jarrell is an interesting poet, a wonderful, wonderful person, and also a fantastic critic. His book, Poetry in the Age, is immortal, or should be. But he wrote a lot of other things. Oh my God, a lot of other volumes. I don't even have it all. And I've wanted this volume. Letter collections have been really growing on me in the last 3 or 4 years. And I would have got this anyway, but one of the reasons that I got it was because of BookTube, because I had BookTube looking over my shoulder. David Novak reads poetry. I watched his latest video. He rambles all over the place in a wonderful, wonderful way. Just a wonderful, rambly video. And one of the books that he mentions in that video is this one, No Other Book, by Randall Jarrell, a collection of his critical writings. And one of the points that David Novak makes is that the Kipling essay in here, Preparing to Read Kipling, doesn't really work. That it doesn't really land. And I was sputtering when I was listening to that in his video, because I kind of think it does. And that immediately, I mean, David Novak is the real deal. So if he says that essay doesn't work, I might not end up agreeing with him, but I have to think about it. I can't just, there's no possible way that I can hear him talk about something even tangentially connected to poetry and think he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's missing the elephant in the room, anything like that. Any of the usual consolations that we give when our darlings are bruised. There's no way you could do that with him. I don't know how long BookTube's going to have him, but there's no way that I could do that with him. So I immediately went fishing for this thing to reread that essay, and I'm sure that I will fall into reading a lot of other stuff that's in here. But this was adjacent to that because I had Randall Jarrell on the mind, I guess you could say. But then the last three that we'll deal with here are squarely for people in April. Squarely for people. For reading biographies of life writing. Let's see here. What have we got? Well, there's this big thing. This was sent to a critic. This has the pub sheet in it from... do we have a date? 1992. This is the translation into English by, you're going to tell me? Philip Radley. This is a translation into English of The Italics Are Mine, the memoir of Nina Berberova. Big, thick thing that I have never read. It was written a good 2 decades before it was actually brought over into English. And it's her life story. And I remember when this came out, I want to double check that it wasn't me that got this copy. Is that true? Okay, Berberova. No, okay. Okay. Oh boy. All right, it is addressed to a critic. To a book section editor, just like I am now, only for a considerably bigger paper. And the book section editor is known to me. He culled this from his library. Great. But this, I remember when this was translated into English. I remember this very volume in bookstores. And I remember I had critical friends, including the original recipient of this book, saying outlandishly oversized things about it, saying that it stopped some critics in the easy patter for which we are known. It stopped some of them, which is always when I start paying attention. When a critic who's a burbler, when a book comes up and they say, that book, that's real. That's something real. And the critics who did manage to get words out edgewise all said that it was a towering achievement. Greater than anything else this author had ever written. Any of her short stories, any of her essays or whatnot, any of her fiction, certainly. And also a couple of people, one person in particular who is coming up sideways in this book haul a couple of times. One person pointed out, I said to him, God, however many years ago, I said, it's not like you. It's extremely like you to praise the Russians, but not nonfiction. And he said, oh, nonfiction. I guess technically. Which leads me to think that I'm in for a ride here, which is great, because somehow or another I never managed to read it. And then I found this. This is a collaborative thing. William Irvine started this, wrote it for a long time, and then died. And Park Honan finished it. This is their big biography of Robert Browning. The book, The Ring and the Poet, a play on a long poem by Browning that I absolutely love. A big, thick, scholarly biography of Browning that, if I remember correctly, is also incredibly readable. Haven't seen it in a while, don't have it, so I grabbed it. And then finally, if I'm not counting the Agatha Christie as the find of the day, or Epic Illustrated #1, then this might be the find of the day, because I've never seen this out in the wild. I've only seen it in libraries. This is by Eugene Exman, and it is The Brothers Harper. And it's a multi-biography, so it does count for people. It's a biography of those fine gentlemen. The Harper brothers, who started Harper Brothers on Harper and Row, and the name still echoes. It still exists as part of HarperCollins. This is going to be their collective biography, but also I feel certain this is also going to be a great snapshot of American publishing a century ago. I feel certain that will be true. How could it not be? So I'm there twice over. I'm there for both of those things. So there you go. So The Brothers Harper, I finally have a copy of my own. And I don't know that I'm going to be able to do a Steve Pyramid. These are a lot of books. The Brothers Harper, Robert Browning, Nina Berberova, Randall Jarrell, What have we got here? Al Silverman. What? Agatha Christie. We've got Bertram Small. William Dean Howells. Poor Micah Cummins. The Battle of Bull Run. No. No. And then a ton of mass market paperbacks. A ton of Conan, basically. So a fine, fine day at the Brattle to tide me over for when nature unleashes her wrath in just a day. When we get a warm spring rain that might last as long as 18 consecutive minutes. You'll have to pray for me. I hope I make it through. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.